Merry Christmas everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leah Catherine and this is Leah Sees Movies. Now normally I try to dress up and look a little bit less quarantine pajamas than I normally look, but today,
Sean, it's Christmas.
this is what you're gonna get. So I just watched Soul on Disney Plus, starring Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey, directed by Peter Docter, Kent Powers, and written by them along with Mike Jones. I'm gonna be honest, going into this I was a little bit nervous. I try very hard to ignore reviews. I read them after, I like to see what people are saying, but before I try to go in with a clean slate, but it's kind of hard to ignore tweets. I tend to read it before I realize I don't want to read it. So I had heard a couple of mixed things about this movie and was just like, oh god, I hope this isn't going to be like a Christmas downer. But it's not. It is a little bit of a Christmas existential crisis, but I'm into that. It made me cry, but I always cry in existential crisis. That's why I love Toy Story 4, which I think is severely underrated. The reason a lot of people had their doubts about this movie is because it seemed to fall in line with a weird recent animation trend where we'd get a black animated character who's then turned into an animal or in some other way dehumanized. We had Princess and the Frog where Tiana is turned into a frog. We had Spies in Disguise where Will Smith is turned into a pigeon. And then this trailer came out, everyone was really excited until our main character gets turned into a weird blue blob, at least in the trailer. So yeah, going in, I was a little concerned about that. And happily, there actually is a pretty decent amount of time in the human world. The trailer set it up like you were going to be a blue blob for the entirety of the film, kind of an Inside Out kind of thing, which I'm using as a visual comparison, but I haven't actually seen it. So for plot similarities, I'm probably not your person. So we do spend a lot of time in the human world, and it actually is gorgeous. Every second that you're in it, you're like, yes, good, this is what I wanted. And what's interesting is that I do think our lead, for reasons I'll explain more in the spoiler section of my review, doesn't get as much time to be a fleshed out human, but we are in the human world and we actually get this really fleshed out community. We see him, with his mother and his mother's tailor shop. We see him in a barber shop for a while, which is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, of just people talking and hanging out and socializing. You get a very honest look at kind of the black experience of the hair salon. But it just felt very real and authentic, which is saying a lot considering how kind of not ridiculously, but they're definitely cartoonish proportions, but it never feels like a caricature. It doesn't feel like, did you have to draw the black people? Like, it's not that at all. It's like, this is a character, it's a cartoon, but they still feel real. I feel like people you've seen before, and I'm pretty sure I've already seen people thirsting after Des, and that was only from some stills. Now that the movie is out, I'm expecting my Twitter to get very weird once again, but it is better than the Zootopia tiger, so I'm glad our animated crushes are on the uptrend. No spoilers, but this is all in the trailer. So at the beginning of the film, Joe, played by Jamie Foxx, dies. He seeming to have the best day of his life as a struggling jazz musician who right now is a middle school band teacher, gets this big break, and before he can do it, he dies. And now he's trying to basically escape the great beyond and ends up in the great before, where he meets Tina Fey's 22. 22 is an unborn spirit who has been resisting all attempts to get her final spark that would send her to be born on Earth. This movie explores the idea of passion versus purpose, which hit me very deeply because I feel like, as someone who's kind of been in a constant quarter life crisis since the age of like 18, you think a lot about when you go to college, when you graduate, like, what is my life going to be? What am I meant to do? What's going to make me happy? And then this movie kind of deals with the idea that maybe the thing that makes you happy isn't the thing you are meant to do, but also maybe the thing you're meant to do is the thing you didn't think was going to make you happy. In fact, at the end of the movie, I find myself wrestling with what decision Joe is going to make. What's going to make him happy? Has he realized a new purpose in his life by way of chasing his first passion? Before Joe goes back to Earth, he ends up in the great before with all of the other unborn souls. There he's met by a bunch of interdimensional celestial managers called the Jerrys, voiced by Richard Iwadi, Fortune Formeister, Alice Braga, and Wes Studi, and they're hilarious. Like, they're so kind of loving and benevolent. For those of us who've seen The Good Place, you get kind of a Michael vibe without the you know, demonic energy, but just this kind of caretaker, manager energy, as they're so much bigger and wider, like beyond what any human can reckon with. But they're kind of almost patronizing, but in an entertaining way of like, well, your tiny, fragile human mind can only, understand so much, so just call me Jerry. And they're animated in this really nice 2D abstract art way. Like, they definitely are humanoid, but they also kind of just look like a bunch of sketch drawings. And then the Jerrys are accompanied by Terry, who is the counter of all the souls going to the great beyond. As Joe tries to escape, passing on into the light, she gets on his case to bring him back from Earth to where he's meant to be. She's played by Rachel House, and oh my gosh, Terry's hilarious. I wanted so much more Terry. Not only is she funny, is Rachel House very funny, her voice acting is great, but the way, like I said, the Jerrys and Terry are kind of two-dimensional, so the way she goes through the world, jumping from line to line, and kind of briefly becoming visible and then blending right back into this computer-animated, three-dimensional looking world is so fun to look at. And it really made me nostalgic for 2D animation. I want it back. Princess and the Frog was the last of a pure 2D animation film that we've had for like the last decade. And I want it back. There are other studios making it, but unfortunately Disney has really invested into the Frozen Tangled 3D big head, big eye thing. I'm good on that for now. I think we can go back to the classics for a reason. I don't have too much more to say on Soul without getting into spoilers. This movie did come out today, so you can go watch it and then come right back here, or maybe you've already watched it and you skipped here first. But this is now the spoiler section. Warning, spoilers incoming. So, I was very annoyed when Joe got turned into a cat. We're gonna start right there. You know, I spoke about how they kind of walk this line between dehumanizing him completely and keeping that spirit, and it felt like Joe never got to fully be human. Obviously, 22 experiencing humanity is what led her to find her spark, but everyone else was so vivid and three-dimensional and great, and just the sigh I let out when he fell in this stupid cat, because it's much better than Spies in Disguise. I don't think really too many people saw that movie, but that movie had a weird thing where Will Smith's character was like being guilt-tripped by Tom Holland for wanting to be human. It was really weird. It was saying like it's bad that he wants to be a person. So this movie, I liked that even though he did get turned into a cat, they don't lean too much into the cat comedy until you get to the point where 22 runs away in his body, because once again I was like, why are they being depicted as selfish for wanting to be themselves? I don't like that. But again, I'm really conflicted on the execution of it, because I do think the world was very well built and the other characters are so real and vivid, but I like a little splinter, and I think what was an otherwise enjoyable movie. I did think the movie was going to end with him quitting the band he'd just become a part of and becoming a full-time teacher. I feel like the whole idea that being a teacher was his purpose was being hammered in, and then at the end of the movie they say, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, this is gonna be it. He's gonna say, I'm gonna be a teacher, because you see with Curly, his former middle school student is calling him for a job opportunity because that is the impact that he made in Curly's life. Curly says he wanted to quit school, but band is what kept him coming back. Connie, who comes to his house and wants to quit the trumpet but doesn't really, she's like, well, I'm going to quit, but first let me, hear me play this thing. And then being told that she's great is what makes her want to stick with it. And then even the Jerrys at the end say, our job is inspiration, but you inspired us. So I really thought the message was going to be, your passion may be music, but your purpose is to teach, your purpose is to spread that passion. But they didn't go there. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's the whole idea that they can't, I'm sure maybe the message is that you can't delegate what someone's purpose is. It's up to them to find it for themselves. But it kind of bothered me. I wanted that loose end tied up. I also feel like if that was the mindset, they left it really vague and then made you and Joe feel like you were dumb for misunderstanding them. When the final Jerry was like, no, we never said that your passion, your spark was your purpose in life. Oh, humans and your purpose. Except everything we've ever seen of them is that your purpose, your spark was always a thing. Archery, baking, chemistry, rocket, music, painting, it was a thing, and then we just had to assume that if the soul is sparked by soccer, that person goes on to become an athlete. So then when Joe is confused saying, but music is my spark, music is my purpose, they're like, we never said that. And they didn't. But I don't like them trying to make us sound like we're dumb for misinterpreting it when the cards, as they were laid out, clearly pointed to one message. It's also doubly confusing because they emphasize that the souls don't have senses. 22 was never able to spark because she didn't feel a connection to what humanity is or felt like. So how are the other souls being sparked by something they can't really feel? Has any soul been sparked by cooking but they can't taste? I'm sure they can't feel pain. You can still enjoy a game of soccer without getting hurt. So I'm sure they can still feel it. But it leaves a lot of questions. Why aren't there more 22s? I feel like there's a fairly obvious issue with making these creatures want to be ready for Earth if they only have the paper description of what Earth is. Which again, I'm going to keep bringing this back to The Good Place, but when you see the Maya Rudolph as the judge, when she's just like, I don't know, humanity is this, that, or the other, and everyone argue the case, and they say, well, you don't know what humanity is like because you haven't been there. And then she goes down to Earth and realizes it's awful and wants to blow it up. But even then, that's still an experience. She experienced so many things that made her form a real opinion, whereas before she was kind of being swayed each way or the other because she didn't have a foundational understanding of what it was to be human. And neither do any of the souls. So that just seems like a pretty large blind spot for the writers. It didn't decrease my enjoyment necessarily, but if you're going to get philosophical, I feel like maybe it shouldn't be something you can poke holes in. Soul wasn't a perfect movie. There are a few things that kind of bothered me, things that I'm going to be thinking about. The philosophy of it seems like it could use a little bit of fine-tuning, but I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. I laughed. I cried. Tina Fey was not as annoying as I thought she was going to be. From the trailers with 22 doing that little dance, I was like, oh god, it's going to be just like bottom shelf humor. But it wasn't. It felt very authentic. Like I said, that barbershop scene felt like something I've been in. It felt like a place I've been to, and I really enjoyed that. And it was a really wonderful Christmas watch. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to go watch Wonder Woman 1984, and then I'll be right back here. Thank you, and peace. Oh yeah, be sure to like and subscribe, if you want to. Bye!